All right, welcome back to Las Vegas live at Big 12 Media Days. I am John Kurtz, and I'm joined now by the Deputy Commissioner of the Big 12, Tim Weiser, former athletic director at K-State as well. Really appreciate you taking some time to join me, Tim. I feel like you called your shot. I remember we talked to you last year, and you said, "Hey, I kind of feel like we're not done adding schools," and you did. You had a pretty good insight into that one. Take me through what it was like being in the Big 12 office as you guys were pursuing those four schools.
Well, it was such a different rhythm than what we had experienced the last time when we added Houston, BYU, Cincinnati, Central Florida. Much different set of circumstances, obviously, with the announcement about Oklahoma and Texas. We were in a kind of a rapid fire mode, and thankfully we had four schools that we had identified from a previous exercise years earlier that made it easy for us to move pretty quickly on it. I think this time the difficulty was trying to understand what was fact and what was fiction about the Pac-12 situation. At the time, the AD at Arizona and I had a long history, and so some conversations with him that led me to believe that, there was clearly some movement and some opportunities that were going to come. It was just because the presidents were really in that league so much more involved and isolated from the ADs. It was at that level, but credit to Brett in terms of how he worked both our TV partners as well as the people that he knew in the industry that gave us some pretty good insight in it. And then it seemed like overnight, essentially, things started to pop. Obviously, the move that USC and UCLA made earlier had factored into that. In many ways, I think the Pac-12 was really more responsible for their demise than the Big 12 was, frankly. I think they would have accepted some of the original offers and opportunities. Maybe not. I don't know all the facts about that, but I think that there was certainly some of that the Pac-12 owned.
Yeah, well, with Colorado being the first to jump there, did it help that they had that previous history with you guys in the conference?
I think so. I think it did help. Again, that's where I would credit Brett, because I think Brett was the one that quickly realized that, having Colorado back in would help maybe facilitate a couple of more moves that could benefit us. And sure enough, that's how it played out.
Yeah. I mean, for you, as a guy that's been around this conference for a long time, do you like having Colorado?
Yeah,
you feel like
absolutely. No, and I think, people are going to Boulder. That's a great trip to make. But I think when you look back at our history and the amount of time that Colorado spent in the league, the Big 8 days, there was a lot of good feeling about having them come back. So, I'm probably as excited, though, about having Arizona State, and Utah also join, because they represent such a different history and part of the country for us, that I think it's going to be fun to see our fans experience going to a Utah football game and what that's like out there. I know a little bit about that from my time at Colorado State, and that's a great facility, great fans out there. So I think that's going to quickly become a favorite for our fans as well.
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to making all those trips and getting out to, K-State's playing BYU this year. It'll be my first time to get a chance to experience that. So that'll be very cool.
BYU, now, my Colorado State days, we didn't have much success going to BYU as I would have liked, but again, that venue and that setting is second to none, really.
Yeah, it is tough to beat. Take me through, working with Brett Yormark. You've mentioned a couple times, how great of a negotiator he is. How he's figured all this out. Do we not know? Do we not get to see about how Brett Yormark operates?
Yeah, boy, that's a great question, John. I would tell you that the first thing that comes to my mind is his energy and work ethic. I mean, I read some of the stories when he was being hired about, goes to bed late, gets up early, and you hear that a lot about certain coaches, certain ADs, and so you kind of took that with a grain of salt. But after having been 15 feet away from him for 2 years, I've watched that kind of work ethic, and it's, believe me, it's not exaggerated. He is incredible, and I've told him before, I don't know anybody that works as long and as hard as he does. And of course, if you're a fan of the Big 12, that should make you feel good, because he's always looking to the next opportunity, whatever that is. You say negotiating, and he's clearly a great negotiator. But perhaps even more importantly, I think he views the future in a way that we wouldn't have otherwise viewed it. And I throw myself into that category because you spend as many years in this business as I have, you kind of get locked into a certain way of thinking about things and seeing things. And Brett came in with none of that. I mean, he clearly had no pre-existing biases about what we should or shouldn't be doing, and that's benefited us. I think it's really created a whole new dynamic, and I'm guessing as time goes on, it's going to be proven to be the right model for conferences to think and act and behave in a way that doesn't look like it did for the last 40 years.
Yeah. Well, I can actually add a little bit of, I can vouch, I guess, for Brett Yormark's work ethic too, because this morning, so we're all staying at the Bellagio, right? I get to the workout room at like 6, and I'm like, man, I'm going to be the first person in there. Guess who was in there already sweating on the elliptical? It was Brett Yormark. So,
yep, and he does that every day. He does that every day. I mean, he starts off his day with a great workout, and I think that's probably what gives him his energy. But it's that routine and that every day doing the same thing to try and figure out how we can get ahead. What can we do to keep ourselves relevant going forward?
Yeah. Do you remember like the hiring process, what that was like with him? And was there resistance to a guy that had that kind of a background?
Well, so at the time, again, we'll have to go back. You remember what the feeling was like about Oklahoma and Texas leaving and what that was going to do to our TV contracts and how much of a loss we were going to take. And I think our presidents at the time they did that search process were really focused on, if that comes to pass, we're going to have to find new revenue streams and can help us identify what those are. And in comes Brett. And one of the stories that I've heard repeatedly is each is asked to bring an idea to the board to share with him. And in Brett's case, and I can just hear him and see him doing this. He said, "I'm sorry, I can't. I brought 10 big ideas," and that really, I think, began to separate him from others because they saw with Brett a guy that's got 1,000 ideas, and maybe a number of them will never work, and thinking about so many different ways to create new revenue streams and opportunity. I think that for the presidents was really important. They wanted somebody that was going to think differently and look differently at running a conference office than what we had previously. And it, frankly, that's not unusual when it comes to any search. You often see somebody hired that's exactly opposite of the person before in terms of their styles and approaches. So that part of it isn't completely usual, but to hire somebody that had 0 years of experience in collegiate athletics, I think that roll of the dice for our presidents, and it's paid off handsomely for them.
But I know he said today, I just heard him at the breakout session saying, like, I'm not going to stop until we're the best conference out there. I mean, there is a considerable now between SEC, Big Ten, and the Big 12. What do you feel like his vision is right now to try and close that gap, bridge that gap, get the Big 12 as close as possible?
I think what I heard him say today, being the best version of the Big 12 that we can, he thrives on being the underdog. I think he's much more suited for that kind of a situation to be in than he would be at the Lakers or the Knicks or the Yankees. Or I think he prefers to be in a situation where you've got nothing to do but fight every day for the best you can be. And I would tell you that's, to me, what would give me hope if I was investing in the Big 12 is that you got a guy that's going to try and find, does he control how many football games K-State wins? No, those are still decisions that are out of his hands. Trying to find additional resources to send back to our member institutions to help deal with the myriad of issues that you know well about, I think is perhaps the single most important that a conference can be.